Now, I would like to call Dr. Praveen Arora ma'am to facilitate Shivan Sharma sir with the sapling.
Next, I would like to welcome the President of ITHINK panel, Parth Agarwal, for welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed faculty, and our enthusiastic audience, a resounding welcome to the ITHINK panel, an intellectual haven where minds converge and ideas flourish. And it is with great pleasure that I, the President of the ITHINK panel, stand before you, eager to embark on yet another captivating exploration of ideas and discourse. In the spirit of inclusivity and intellectual curiosity, I extend my warmest greetings to each one of you. Our journey together in the past has seen us traverse the expansive landscape of the metaverse, dissect the intricacies of ChatGPT, and navigate the ever-evolving world of NFTs. But today, our collective focus shifts to a pivotal theme: inclusive growth, evaluating the G20 summit agendas and outcomes. Before we dive into the heart of our discussion, I want to express my heartfelt appreciation for the unwavering dedication of everyone involved: the brilliant panelists, the meticulous moderator, the anchors, and the hard-working roleplay team. Can you please have a huge round of applause for our panel team? It is through this collaborative effort that we aim to create a platform for meaningful and engaging discussions. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the instrumental role played by our esteemed faculty heads, Dr. Jyotsna Oswal ma'am and Dr. Navneet Joshi sir. Their constant support and guidance have been the compass guiding us through the realms of knowledge, ensuring that the ITHINK panel remains a beacon of intellectual excellence. As we set sail into today's dialogue, I urge you all to absorb, reflect, and actively participate. Your unique insights are the threads that weave the tapestry of our discourse, enriching our exploration of diverse perspectives. So let's continue to nurture an environment where ideas converge and shape the intellectual landscape that propels us forward. So here's to an intellectually stimulating discussion. Thank you all.
Now, I would like to take permission from the organizers to get this event started. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Now, you all must be wondering what G20 is all about. The G20, or Group of 20, is a forum of economic cooperation that is held annually under rotating presidency. It was established in 1999 as a response to Asian financial crisis. It consists of 19 sovereign nations, the European Union and the African Union. It plays an important role in shaping and strengthening global architecture and governance on all major economic issues.
Confusing, right? Now let us understand this with the help of an endorsing role. Please welcome our roleplay team.
A story is lifeless without a narrator. Please welcome our narrator, Priyanshi Bansal. I would request everyone to welcome them with a huge round of applause.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi chose as his theme for the G20 as a group of 20 presidency, a theme from Sanskrit scripture Vasudeva Kutumbakam, representing global unity. The phrase taken from the Hindu scripture Brahma Upanishad means the family of one world. For instance, the Brookings Institute mentions the former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in 1989 cited Vasudeva Kutumbakam for a challenge to avoid the word forced second and third world and revive the one world system. Also, this is the reason why Modi ji chose to convert the slogan into English. One world, one future and one earth. Good morning to one and all present here. Today, we are here to present a small art on the topic G20.
Indonesia on Wednesday handed over the G20 presidency to India at the Bali summit for coming year. Here, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses it as a pride for every Indian citizen. He said, together with every country's effort, we can make the G20 a global success.
This G20 summit is all over the internet. But why is it happening? What is the motive of this conference, eh? Okay, the motto is just to give holidays, na?
Oh, look, finally made up. The torch bearer of our family, Sleeping Beauty.
Come on. He's my dad. You cannot don't say him like that.
Come on, Dad. Come on, Mom. It's Sunday now. Mom, where's my breakfast, yaar?
Wait, sir, I have been something for you.
Wait, Rameshwari, sit. Today you first tell me about G20. Then I will wait for you.
Right? G20? I didn't quite get that.
You didn't quite get that? I am spending so much money on this silly federal education and you don't quite get that.
No, Dad. Today, I would first have my prontas only. Then this G20.
No, Branda, only dhokla. Uttar, Papa is asking now. Explain.
No.
Tell me right now.
Sorry, Dad. I'm explaining.
So, this time the agenda was basically decided by three countries. The past president, that was Indonesia, the current president, that was India, and the future president, that will be Brazil. And there were total three agendas that were discussed in that summit. The first one was green development, climate, finance, and life. The second one was women-led development, and the third one was technological transformation.
Okay, you got the people. Come.
Come here, sir. I'm your friend, Abhika. Tell me really. Did you learn that from school?
From school. Dad, who learns from school? My only savior is ChatGPT.
If you think you are bad, I am your dad.
We have a world with futuristic view, but isn't it important to know about the history as well? So now let us throw some shine through the history of G20 through this scene.
I was feeling scooty in my petrol.
What?
Oh, sorry. I was feeling petrol in my scooty.
Do you have any sense?
Uncle, I know you. Uncle, I know.
Go and sit on your seat and behave yourself. Let us start with today's lecture. What is the discussion all about?
Ma'am, the discussion is all about the failure of the G20 summit, and I genuinely think that we should be organizing a G20 event right here in our classroom.
Do you think I'm a fool?
No, ma'am, absolutely not.
It is good to know that you know about G20. But before that, I gave you something for yesterday, I remember.
Yes, ma'am, it was homework.
You behave yourself. I know I gave you the homework, but I also knew nobody of you will do that. So let us continue with G20 only. G20. Do you all know how it was started? Isn't it the first global summit, ma'am? No, my dear. It is not the first global summit. Everything in the world has a history, and this one has one too.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yes, this is an interruption.
Ma'am, history is just like a boring ad. Do we have an option to skip this ad too?
My dear, I wish I could say that too.
Ma'am, अब मैं इतना भी कुछ खास नहीं है।
Do you know how to behave in the class? Behave yourself. This is not a fish market. Let us continue with the brief of G20. G20, yes.
Can I please make my notes?
Yes, you may. And you, learn something from him.
Ma'am, actually I could have made notes, but I have forgot my pen at home.
Come and sit on the first bench.
Ma'am, I have a pen. I leave.
I know all your pens and notebooks, okay? Let me tell you about G20. This all started from G7 in 1970s. Then it was continued by G8 in 1997 when Russia joined it. And now we are here with G20 in 2023.
Ma'am, I have another doubt.
Yes, my class is incomplete without your doubts, my dear.
So ma'am, from G7 to G8 and now to G20, this summit is just like India's population, growing and growing.
Unlike you, my dear, stop at a point. Yes.
As you know, I know everything going around in the world, so I might just share my knowledge with my friends.
Yes.
So from G7's exclusive club to G20's inclusive gathering, it's truly a global family movement.
Yes. See now, I didn't expect that from you, and that's enough for today's class. I'm leaving. Sorry, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
Do you guys remember at the time of G20, there were a lot of myths all around India. Wrong info, unawareness, and wrong information. So, let us move forward to know how these problems came to an end.
Oh man, pick it up.
I don't know why do they do this to us every time now.
Oh, good morning, Ramu. What happened? Why are you so stressed? Everything?
Shamu, my buddy, I am serious. Don't you know anything about G20 now?
G20? I know only about T20.
I know. What should I do of this silly fellow? Always chill mode on.
Yeah, whatever. Tell me now what happened.
This G20 summit is being held in Delhi for 3 days. They give us losses for 30 days. I understand the whole month.
Oh, tell me clearly. 3 days or 30 days?
This guy needs explanation for everything. People from all over the world are coming to our country for the summit. And for the security purpose of the same, the whole Delhi is closed. You can realize the whole city.
Whole city? My God, another lockdown? Fifth child?
Hey, stop it with the stupid nonsense and focus on what I am explaining. It is a very critical situation for people like us, not only for the vendors, but for the shop, malls, public transport. Everything is suspended for 3 days. I don't understand that.
That means waste of time, loss of money, and nothing to do except.
Absolutely. Now you understand, you silly fellow. All of this are pointless. It will lead to losses for people like us.
But my friend, what we should do?
By the way, your aloo looks very gala.
Idly. Tell tomorrow.
I want to see the power of Sambara.
What they thought and what actually happened had a difference of day and night. As you all know, education is the paved path from dark past to bright future. So, education is the only solution for this situation. So, let us make these people aware and educate them.
Oh, hi, Sejal. Hi, Tisha. I have to be audio super shopping.
Vanakkam, madam. What do you want? Potatoes, tomatoes, onion.
Madam ji, go with the full, powerful.
Yanna poda, I don't have in cherry well. If you want tomato or potato, you ask for that.
Tomato, bhaiya, tomato.
Oh, tomato you are asking for. So say now what you have in cherry well. Hey, where will you go shopping? US or what? They all are coming here for G20 summit. Don't they bola?
I think higher school are there.
Wait a minute, Madam Ji. This guy told me that everything is closed.
No. Who told you this? All shops and malls are open. I'm getting a manicure done tomorrow.
Manicure. My Dhoti was also asking me about this. Madam Ji, how much time does it take?
2-3 घंटा खाया.
Ooh, 2-3 घंटा no siapa. Take her also.
Hey, you stop it with the manicure pedicure. What are you doing? And tell me, is it happening or not?
Yes, it is happening. Yes, only the area around Central Secretary is closed.
Oh, yeah, is it so?
Let's see.
Oh.
This मामला is तो very ठंडा. My name is Lassi. Give me your Lassi.
चलो let's see. चलो.
Facts which are really important to understand, important to hear things, which have a done image in our mind, they are really beneficial and a must to know. So, how can we escape such an important thing? Let's have a look to the two bodyguards who visited India, one from Australia and another from Russia.
So finally, we have entered into a place full of slums filled with beggars and poor.
Hey mate, what else do you expect from these people, huh?
A small Suzuki Wagoner as a taxi,
Probably been hurting less than you wanted.
and a filthy ground for Sunday.
Indeed, my friend, indeed.
Hey guys, what are you looking for?
The small taxis that you guys can afford.
Hey guys, where's your car? Mercedes. Oh my God.
Is that not ready for us?
Yes, my friend. Let's go.
I expected to book cart.
I am curious to see small buildings. Let's go.
Called slum made slums.
Are you comedy? See those sky-high buildings and the 20-lane highways.
Is this really India, mate?
Oh yes, my friend. What do you mean? What I mean? Let me show you to the Bharat Mandapam.
Not in the South India.
Oh, the Raj, sabar karo. Let's go and see an executive.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir. Welcome to India.
Hey, how you doing, lady?
Can you breathe properly?
Can you really welcome?
Let me tell you what all India is constructed to conduct of G20 summit. For the successful conduction of G20 summit,
The government of India spent around 40 billion rupees for the construction and beautification of the venue. As many as 120 fountains and 70 large statues were established. Also, to give great look to the roads attaching airport to Pragati Maidan were reconstructed for a successful conduction. Government arranged a 3-layer security for your safety. About 25 luxury hotels were booked for you guys to stay in the venue.
Oh my God! So many luxury cars! So beautiful, so elegant, just looking like a wow, man! Thank you, ma'am. Our country is so big. I didn't expect this from India, right? That's why it is said, mate. Never judge too early. And also, a motto is Atithi Devo Bhava. That means the guests are equivalent to the God. The image of India in my mind was completely different from what actually it is.
We just thought it's a poor country filled with beggars.
Let me enlighten you guys that India's GDP is bigger than both of your GDPs combined. What? और भाई कैसा लगा? आ गया इस बार?
Now, you all must have got some clarity about the G20 summit. But to further elaborate it, we are continuing the culture of panel discussions. And I once again
immense honor to welcome Vedal Nautiyar as moderator for today's panel discussion. Please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your moderator, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this panel discussion on the inclusive growth evaluating G20 summits, agendas, and outcomes. Today, we have a distinguished panel of students who will share their insights on G20, its significance, and the outcome of the recent summit. And now, let's welcome our panelists on the stage. First up, we have Sanskriti Sharma. Please give her a huge round of applause, guys. Next, we have Radhika Seth. Coming up next, R. Gopal. Next, we have Ansh Gupta. After that, we have Mahesh Gupta. Our sixth panelist, Kanishka Sethi. After that, we have Bhavya Arora. And now our last panelist, Dhruv Bhunga. Thank you, panelists. Before we delve into this discussion, let us have a brief introduction about G20 and its significance. G20 was established in 1999 in response to Asian financial crisis. G20 has played a pivotal role in solving some global issues such as 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the climate change. It has also been an instrument in promoting trade and investment and encouraging financial inclusion and also promoting sustainable development. And now, let's turn to our panelists to gather some more insights about the topic. So, who's going to be the first person to give us the introduction about G20, G20 and the recent summit?
Yes, I would take the initiative. Once we decide we have to do something, we can go miles ahead. Send the PM in our mind, but a bold message. Hello everyone, I am here to give a brief overview on the topic of history of G20 and why was it formed. But before that, our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji made all of us proud as G20 was a successful event which took place all around different states of our country. Let me start with a proper introduction. But before that, the most common misconception is that people oftenly think that G20 oftenly represents all the countries worldwide. No, let me explain that. Many countries are not part of this group. G20, a group of 20, consists of 19 countries and an European Union, which is also an international forum to promote global economic stability and cooperation. But who all are the members of this group? Please have a look here. Now, Indonesia, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and Turkey. Now, can any of you raise his or her hand whose name starts with A? Anyone? Yes. You please stand up. You raised your hand, right? Okay. So, I would like to tell you the new member of G20. Now, African Union is also a part of this group, which is a great initiative towards its growth and development. Now, G20 operates on one presidency system, which means one country gets presidency for over a year, and they can make its own guidelines and the agenda during its own tenure. Now, I would like to give a brief overview of its history and why was it formed. I would like to start by giving the background check first. The G20 can be traced back to the long late 1990s, particularly the Asian financial crisis of 1997 and the Russian financial crisis of 1998. Now, when was G20 established? G20 was established in the year of 1999. Has G20 always been a group of 20 nations? No, it primarily consisted of 7 nations, and they were, we got Canada, France, Germany, Italy,
America. After a while, Russia also joined this group, and it was G8, a group of 8. G7 wasn't one of the trendiest topic, but when did it start getting the recognition? It started getting the prominence recognition in the early 20s, particularly the global financial crisis of 2008. The first summit took place in Washington, D.C. in November 2008, and it turned into a historic point. And why is that? It turned into a historic point because all the leaders pledged to take a step and initiative towards global economic stability and the future financial crisis. Now, my next topic to discuss will be why was it actually formed? The G20 was formed to address the economic, international, and the financial challenges. It emerged in the response of Asian financial crisis of 1997 and the global financial crisis of 2008, as discussed before. Now, what are the key agenda points? The key agenda points are preventing protectionism, which means an open and enhanced free trade. And then we got preventing future financial crisis, global economic stability. Now, before continuing to my next topic, I would like to show you a video of G20 2023 summit.
G20 के उदाहरण के तौर पर भारत पूरी दुनिया का आह्वान करता है कि हम मिलकर सबसे पहले इस ग्लोबल ट्रस्ट को एक विश्वास एक भरोसे में बदले। यह हम सभी के साथ मिलकर करने का समय है और इसलिए सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास का मंत्र हम सभी के लिए एक पथ प्रदर्शक बन सकता है। हमसे नए समाधान मांगते हैं। 21वीं सदी का समय पूरी दुनिया को नई दिशा दिखाने वाला और नई दिशा देने वाला एक महत्वपूर्ण समय है। सबका साथ की भावना से भारत ने प्रस्ताव रखा था कि अपने यूनियन को G20 की स्थायी सदस्यता दी जाए। भारत की G20 सदस्य देश के भीतर और देश के बाहर इंक्लूजन का सबका साथ का प्रतीक है। भारत में वो थीम ऑफ G20 है।
Well, we all can see how successful our G20 2023 summit was and how all the leaders of the major economies brought together. Now, my next topic and the last topic to be discussed are the few pointers of what are the objectives of G20. We have economic cooperation, development, climatic changes, global economic governance. In summary, the G20 summary history is rooted for a more comprehensive forum, which means a more economic and a more international. In summary, the G20's history can be rooted for a more comprehensive forum of addressing the international and financial challenges. And it was my great honor to represent here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanskriti. Your introduction was like a refreshing cup of tea, warming us up and preparing us for the discussion ahead. Now, who's going to be the next person to spill the tea on India's role in this global gathering?
Hi, Vaibhav. I would like to talk on this topic. A very warm good afternoon to one and all present here. My name is Radhika Seth, and today I want to present my thoughts on the topic India's exciting role as the host of G20 Summit 2023. The G20 Summit 2023 was the 18th annual meeting of G20, that is, the Group of 5. It was the first ever G20 Summit held in India. And do you guys know where it was actually held? It was held at Bharat Mandapam International Exhibition Convention Center, Pragati Maidan, New Delhi, from 9th to 10th September 2023. Collectively, G20 represent a staggering 85% of global GDP, 75% of global trade, and about 2/3 of world's total population. One of the defining features of G20 Summit is its annual rotation of presidency from one nation to another that are the part of the G20 group. Currently, India is holding the G20 presidency from 1st December guys ever seen stars landing through the wind? Like, not the real stars, but human stars, like the real stars in true sense are the leaders of the nation, of the group of 20. So here is a video. So let's look at their action because actions speak louder than the words. At the end of the video, you can see our honorable Prime Minister, the great leader, the star, and the captain of the team who was leading the discussions, Mr. Narendra Damodar Das Modi. As the host of this summit, India's main goal was to promote inclusive and sustainable growth. Now, what is inclusive growth? Inclusive growth is the growth of all the sectors of the society. That is, all people, everyone gets a chance to grow together. We together need to make inclusivity and sustainable growth the sun that shines so brightly in the sky of every nation that each citizen get a chance to shine under it. Now, talking about the shine, another area where India shines the most is renewable energy. We are huge on using clean and renewable sources of energy, and that gives us an upper hand among other nations. And this platform gave us a chance to show our leadership in this field. It's like being the cool kid in the class to inspire others to do better. But is G20 really all about discussions? No, it is not about that. So here's the in which our Prime Minister, the great leader, is confused whether to choose diplomatic relations or inclusive growth. But being a multitasker, he chose both, an inclusive alliance. Now, as we welcome leaders from across the globe, as a vibrant democracy, India had a lot to offer. A rich cultural heritage, a diverse population, and a strong commitment towards sustainable development. This event was a huge success. It's like all the other countries are showing a thumbs up to our nation and saying that, hey, you are doing great. So in the end, I would just like to say that this event was a big deal for us. And this platform, this summit, gave us the chance to show the world that what we are made of and what we are capable of. And I can confidently say that this summit was a resounding success because of India's hospitality and warmth. Thank you, that was from my side.
Thank you, Radhika. The insight on India's role in this recent summit was as sharp as a well-known pencil, leaving us with no room for ambiguity. And now, who's ready to summarize the G20 summit's key takeaways?
Good afternoon, one and all. I am Arupa, and today I am going to give a summary on G20 summit failure. The G20 summit is held annually. The G20 summit is held annually with a rotating presidency. And in 2023, India is the country with the presidency in their hand. India with the presidency in their hand would like to promote the idea of oneness. That's why the name of the theme is One Earth, One Family, and One Future. The G20 summit was held in New Delhi, which had 3 sessions in which various social and economical issues were discussed. The main motive to discuss these issues was to make the world a better place for living for the current as well as the future generation. India is on a mission to bring about the shared global future for all through the Amritkal initiative and the Life movement. Indeed, the G20 summit basically focuses on the 2 major tracks that are the Sherpa track and the finance track. The finance track is for the finance minister and the central bank governors. The Sherpas are basically responsible for overseeing the negotiations that occurs throughout the year. India had its priorities set for the G20 summit that were global warming, climate change, and women-led development. Climate change is a very major issue that India decided to talk about because of the increase in the temperature of the earth. This led to various issues such as shortage of water in various places and increase in the sea level, which leads to floods and other natural disasters. This was held in New Delhi on September 9 and September 10 in the Bharat Mandapam Pragati Maidan. The major outcomes for the G20 Summit 1, the African Union joined the G20 as a permanent member. A new alliance named as GBA, Global Biofuel Alliance, has been made to promote the use of biofuels. A new corridor for transportation of goods has been made from India to Middle East and connecting Europe also. This corridor is named as Indian-European Middle Eastern Corridor. The countries that signed this agreement were Israel, Jordan, the European Union, and the UAE, including India. This was all about the G20 summit held in India. Thank you.
Thank you all. Your summary on G20 Summit's key takeaways was like a well-written script, capturing the essence of the event without missing a single beat. So, who's going to be the next person to take on the stage and enlighten us with G20's agendas?
I would like to talk about this topic better. So good afternoon everyone, my name is Ansh Gupta. Today I am interested to share my insight on the agendas of G20 Summit. The G20 or a group of 20 is a crucial international forum where leaders from different economies come together to address pressing global issues. The 2023 G20 New Delhi Summit was the 18th meeting of the G20. It was the first time that the G20 meeting held in India with the motto of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means one earth, one family, one future. But you ever thought why a forum like G20 is important? Let me explain it with the example of India. First, one of the primary purposes of G20 is the global economy. Leaders discuss economic growth, employment, and financial stability. They exchange ideas on policies to foster sustainable and inclusive economic development. As we all know, India's GDP is the sum of production in the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. So this process helps in implementing policies to boost the sector like manufacturing, services, and agriculture, which automatically helps in boosting India's GDP. Second, another key agenda item is financial regulation. G20 members work on policies to enhance the stability and integrity of the global financial system. This can involve discussion on banking reforms, regulatory framework, and measures to prevent financial crisis. India actively participates in the discussion on financial regulation and stability. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have the honor of interviewing our Finance Minister, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, which helps us to get more clarity on the discussion of financial regulation. So, good afternoon, ma'am. Can you tell us what are the agendas which have been discussed under the topic of financial regulation?
The agenda, of course, is by now fairly well determined. We will be talking about the debt situation globally because many countries, which were even middle-income countries, have suddenly got into debt traps, and those traps are really vicious traps. They are not able to come out of it. Now, during the pandemic, debt servicing, there was a scheme which the IMF and also looking at the G20 formulation, there was a plan which had come, debt servicing. And many of these countries didn't have to service their borrowing for a certain period because of the pandemic, and there was a call for extending it, it was extended. But we are also making sure that enough monies are available with these institutions, multilateral institutions, so that they are able to better respond to situation, better leverage over the funds that they already have with them. So these are matters of discussion. Debt servicing, also debt financing, multilateral finance institutions and their reforms, about which Honorable Payne has spoken several times, UN reform, IMF reform, WTO reform, World Bank reform, and so on. So we will be discussing many of these.
Thank you, ma'am, for your great words. Moving forward, another agenda of G20 is trade and investment. Trade and investment play a vital role in G20 discussion. Leaders seek to promote open and fair trade practices, remove trade barriers, and encourage investment that can spur economic growth. The G20 has helped to promote trade liberalization in India by negotiating agreements such as the Trade Facilitating Agreement. These agreements help to reduce tariffs and remove trade barriers, which help Indian businessmen to import and export goods and services more easily. Also, in recent years, addressing climate change and promoting sustainability has gained a significant prominence at G20 meeting. Leaders discuss strategies to combat climate change, transition to cleaner energy sources, and promote sustainable development practices. India is committed to addressing climate change and promoting sustainability. Leaders may put their efforts in increasing renewable energy sources, reducing carbon emission, and implementing sustainable development. Last but not least, G20 also places emphasis on development and inclusivity. Leaders explore ways to reduce inequality, promote education, healthcare, and infrastructure development. If we talk about India, Inclusive Development Index ranked India 67 out of the 74 emerging economies on the topic of inclusive development. While India is on a path of becoming a $5 trillion economy, but economic inequality is still a reality in India. So the government has to put measures to take the all sections of society at an equal level. So this topic is also as important as economic development. So here are the all agendas that have been discussed in the meeting of G20. Thank you.
Thank you all for your presentation, which has given us a detailed map guiding us to the labyrinth of global issues without leaving any doubts. Now, who's going to be the next person to tell us about the outcomes of this crucial summit?
Thank you, Bhagwan. I'd like to continue with this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, gather round for a tale of epic proportions, the saga of the G20 summit that was hosted in New Delhi this year. Now you all must be thinking, a global summit sounds as thrilling as watching paint dry. But hold on to your hats, because this summit was more thrilling and exciting than a roller coaster ride through a candy factory. The subject of the summit was Sudeva Kutumbakam, which translates to one earth, one family, one future, is often based on the principles of sustainable development and ancient Sanskrit writings. Early in the G20 summit, our dear Narendra Modi was able to agree the world on hosting the G20 summit in New Delhi this year. This also ensured that the focus of the world would now be less on the Ukraine and Russia war, but more on the overall development, sustainable development, climate change, global warming, and artificial intelligence, and so on. The very first outcome of the global summit was the Indian Prime Minister's diplomatic coup. India achieved its biggest milestone of diplomatic coup with this summit. This leadership also ensured that the Prime Minister would focus more on the issues facing the global South. The results of the summit was also personally important for a Prime Minister because he will be running for the elections next year. India, with its economic influence, was able to win over all 20 members of the G20 to a leadership declaration that acknowledged the Ukrainian crisis without actually naming the aggressor. The USA also appreciated the Narendra Modi's decision of international organizations such as UNSC to focus more on the dynamic world. The timing of the G20 was also opportune with the successful landing of the Chandrayaan-3 program. The next outcome of the G20 was the G20 Declaration Consensus. The 83 paragraph that included the G20 had 100% consensus, which was a historic and notable event even without Russia and China. This event led to 83 declarations that included the finance as well as 8 paragraphs that discussed the Ukrainian crisis. Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister of our country, didn't fail to mention the achievements of our country in the G20 presidency, such as the digital public infrastructure for financial inclusion, create a regulating path for cryptocurrencies, multilateral banks for finance, as well as she mentioned ways of public relief for the poor as well as developing nations. The next and the most important outcome of the G20 summit was the African Union. Before this, only the South Africa was the African member of the G20 summit. But after this summit, now the African Union, that consists of 55 states, is officially a part of the G20 summit, which was all possible with the cooperation and efforts of our dear Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India seems to fulfill all of its dreams and aspirations of a permanent seat in the UNSC Council and showcasing itself as the leader of the poor and developing nations. The next and the last article of the G20 summit was the climate change. What is G20 if I not talk about the climate change and sustainable development? Climate change included the mainstream lifestyle for environment that is life. They also provided sustainable finance, implemented sustainable energy transitions, and also reaffirmed the pursuit of sustainable developmental goals. They also focused on addressing plastic pollution and preserved the ocean-based economy. In a world where political gatherings are often treated as snooze fests, the India proved that it can be more than a snooze fest, and it was a blockbuster we didn't know we needed. Now is a video on climate change to understand the climate change better. At the end, I would like to say that the G20 was a successful event, and it gave us a global to-do list shorter than a cat's video, but filled and packed with promises and beliefs of a brighter and inclusive future ahead. Thank you.
Guys, please give a huge round of applause for the presentation. Thank you, Parish. Your opinion on G20's outcomes was like a box of chocolate, full of surprises and delight. And now, who's ready to shed some light on the criticism surrounding the G20?
Thank you, Vaibhav. I would like to share my insight on the topic. A very good afternoon to everyone. I am Kanishka Sethi, and looking at the panel by far, all we have discussed is the positive side of the coin. How about we flip it and actually understand the criticism that followed the G20 Summit 2023 organized in India? But before diving into the discussion, let's have a look at a short video.
In a world where power and economics intertwine, the G20 Summit, a gathering of the globe's wealthiest nations, recently held in Delhi, India, has been under fire. Critics argue its focus strayed from pressing social and political issues, including the war in Ukraine and displacement of marginal.
By looking at the video, you might have gotten a gist of the topic, but now let's talk about it. Beginning with animal cruelty done by Municipal Corporation of Delhi, popularly known as MCD, was criticized by many residents and activists for forceful removal and relocation of community dogs prior to the G20 summit. Tell me, what was the fault of those innocent animals who behaved this way? Next, the beautification drive launched by the Indian government. This was seen as a violation of slum residents who were already living in a state of poverty. But this was a way to hide the reality of poverty in India from the world leader visiting for the summit. Following it up with putting on crackdown on civil society gatherings. This was a method to silence dissent or prevent any protests from happening, critical to the G20 summit. The capital of India, New Delhi, was imposed with heavy security. Though this was an important and adequate step, it still made people question the government's commitment towards civil liberty, as it prevented people from moving and restricted their movement. Following it up, the declaration of G20 Summit 2023 omitted few critical issues such as the erosion of civic space and the global decline in democracy. Many believe that this was a missed opportunity to actually discuss the issues and problems pertaining the world today. The high cost. The Indian government spent a significant amount on arranging this G20 summit, which was criticized by many as they believe that this money could have been put to a better use, talking about India socially and economically. But many accept this addition to, many believe that G20 summit is an elitist forum, that it does not focus on the actual poor and marginalized of the world, but it tends to cater wealthy countries and big corporations than actually finding solutions for the problems and issues pertaining the world today. But the Indian government came to its defense, arguing that the G20 summit was a massive success that helped India grow and establish its global stature. But the opinions raised and the questions asked by the residents, by the civil groups, highlights the importance of raising our opinions, holding these authority accountable, to keep them transparent and democratic in their decisions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kanishka. Your presentation on G20's limitation will change our perspectives and challenge our perspectives and ignited a thought-provoking discussion, which was truly outstanding. So, who's going to be the next person to share their insights on G20's exploration?
I'd like to take the field on this one. Thank you. So, by now, we've heard all about this year's G20, its agendas, its objectives, how it actually took place. It's time to look to the future. But before I actually start, I have 4 questions here for all of you. It's basic general knowledge about G20, and I would love for you all to participate. Which country hosted the first ever G20? Can anyone tell me?
US.
Yeah, that's the US. Okay, next question. Which 2 countries didn't attend this year's G20? Yeah, everyone knows this. Such a smart problem. In which year was G20 actually established? 1999, yes. And the last question. Where is G20 2024 supposed to take place? Brazil. So that makes me segue into the future of G20. Brazil so far has established 3 main agendas for next year's G20. India's presidency of G20 will finally end on 1st December and the gavel will be passed on to Brazil. As I already said, the 3 agendas are as follows. Let's talk about the first agenda, which talks about social inclusion and the fight against hunger. Now, my fellow panelists here have been talking about inclusivity and inclusion in general, but what is social inclusion? When we talk about social inclusion, we talk about making efforts toward actually including every single group of society, any minority or any individual disadvantaged community. They need to be included so that everyone feels welcome and participates in society without any discrepancies. Inclusion in itself is actually a core aspect of the 2030 agenda of UN, but UN itself has acknowledged that the efforts that have actually been put forward toward it have yet been lacking severely. Now let's talk about the fight against hunger. Hunger in itself is predictable, preventable, and treatable, but still 1 in 10 people globally suffer from hunger and 75% of malnourished children do not have access to any kind of life-saving treatment. The world situation in this aspect is actually very grave, and especially with the increasing population, it's only about to get worse. So we need to make sure that we take conscious action toward it. The next agenda put forward by Brazil talks about energy transitions and sustainable development. Energy transition basically refers to using methods of energy which are sustainable and renewable. These will help us not only reduce our carbon footprint on the planet, but also eventually reduce climate change. And I know climate change has been such a talked about topic for the past decade now. No one really even takes it seriously. But you and I get it, how serious actually it is. I mean, all we have to do is step outside our door, up in our college, and breathe in the so fresh air. We know how fresh that air actually is. We get how bad the problem is. Let's talk about sustainable development. We all know what sustainable development actually is, but the fact that it has been included in this year's G20 as well as next year's G20 as an agenda only goes to show that progress toward it has yet been lacking. UN had initially aimed that the sustainable development goals be reached by 2030, but the conceptual and theoretical work required to get there has been lacking, so it becomes an agenda in next year's G20 as well. The third agenda of Brazil for next year talks about the complete reformation of world governance institutions, which basically refers to institutions like the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund. Now that we've talked about the objectives of G20 for next year, the question arises, is it actually even relevant anymore? Well, let me elaborate. G20 in itself is very crucial because it represents 2/3 of the world's population, 85% of the global gross product, 75% of international trade, and 80% of investments in research and development. Because of this size and strategic management, it becomes an important aspect in paving the path for the future of global economic growth. Moreover, G20 is a platform where world leaders from developed countries have often reaffirmed their commitment to working with developing countries like India, but also with low-income countries. The main goal here is that these developing and underdeveloped countries can eventually reach their national goals and and eventually the world can reach its international goals. Another main thing to talk about is that in this year's G20, there had been a particular focus on the global south. Now let's take a look at a video of our Prime Minister giving the inaugural speech at the Voice for Global South Summit.
उसे तो ग्लोबल साउथ तो हमेशा से रहा है, लेकिन उसे इस प्रकार से वॉइस पहली बार मिल रही और यह हम सभी के साझा प्रयासों से संभव हुआ। हम 100 से ज्यादा अलग अलग देश हैं, लेकिन हमारे हित समान, हमारी प्राथमिकताएं समान है। फ्रेंड, पिछले वर्ष दिसंबर में जब भारत ने G20 की अध्यक्षता संभाली तो हमने इस फोरम में ग्लोबल साउथ के देशों की आवाज को आगे बढ़ाना अपना दायित्व माना।
So there you have it. As I talked about this year's G20, the next year, and all of its relevance, I think we all get that it's actually very important. It doesn't just help our country develop, but it also helps the world together develop in the correct direction. These days, the terms globalization and interconnectedness are used synonymously, and the world has been reduced to the size of a small town. As our Prime Minister talked about here, it's important to focus on humanitarian needs, values, and beliefs. Because according to him, if we focus on these different aspects, that's the way to go when trying to develop the world, move forward the world in one direction. And yes, it's very difficult to keep all of these aspects in mind all at once. But we have to realize that at the end of the day, this is what will help us move our civilization forward in the correct direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavya. Your insight into the future of G20's exploration was like a ray of sunshine, illuminating the path ahead. So, who should be the next person to wrap up this G20 exploration with a concluding remark?
Therefore, I would love to wrap up and conclude the panel discussion. So, a very warm good afternoon to one and all present out here. As we wrap up our panel discussion, I would like to express my kind gratitude to all my prior panelists present out here for their thoughtful insights and contributions. So, before wrapping up the contribution, I hope that everyone by far would have come through what exactly G20 is, what are the agendas of G20, and what exactly happened in the G20 India 2023 summit. And if still you aren't able to make out what exactly happened in G20 in India, or aren't able to remember what was this event, you may get some idea from this image, most probably, right? Anyways, on one hand, we could see our respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi binding up strong ties with leaders from world's major economies. And on the other hand, we could see animals facing cruelty. These lovely souls never deserve to be behind those bars. We even saw some huge infrastructure development throughout the nation. And on the other hand, we could even see the slums and old buildings or monuments being covered behind those green sheets just because of a beautification drive in the country. Anyways, wrapping up the panel discussion. G20. What exactly is G20? G20 is a group of 20 nations. Not exactly 20 nations, 19 nations and the European Union. It was established in 1999 in response to the financial crisis of the late 1990s. This G20 group meets annually to discuss and coordinate policies on global economic agenda. These global agendas include finance, trade and development. The G20's main focus is to promote stability, sustainable infrastructure and international cooperation. Over the years, G20 has become an important platform for addressing global challenges and even to shape the global economic agenda. Now, moving on to to the G20 India 2023 summit. We could see that G20 India 2023 summit brought together leaders from world's major economies, and for what? They gathered around in India to address pressing global challenges and to chart a path towards more inclusive and a sustainable future. Throughout the panel, we explored various aspects of the summit and even its implications. Being the host of the G20, a gate of numerous benefits opened up for India. As India hosted the G20 2023 summit, it highlighted India's growing influence and leadership in international affairs. And this even helped India to have a stronger voice in shaping up the global economic agenda and policies. One of the main highlights of the G20 India 2023 summit was economic growth and recovery. The discussions revolved around the strategies to combat the adverse effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and to promote resilient and inclusive growth. Leaders from all over the world, especially the ones in the G20, emphasized the importance of trade, collaboration, and investment because all of these, a collective initiative from this country may promote overall growth of the economy, of the global economy, you may say, to ensure the well-being of the citizens of all these nations. Another key theme discussed in the G20 2023 India Summit was sustainable developments. The panelists stated an urgent need to highlight the climate change, biodiversity loss, and numerous other environmental challenges. Even the G20 leaders put emphasis on transitioning towards clean and renewable sources of energy and adopting green technology. For example, moving on to electric vehicles rather than the traditional vehicles in use up till date that are currently running on fuel like petroleum, gasoline, or diesel. Aside of the environmental and the economic issues, the G20 2023 India Summit also shed some light on social development and inclusivity. Our dear panelists mentioned the urgent need to make some policies for empowerment of women, to promote quality education, and to even ensure that all the people of our nation get healthcare, that too affordable and accessible healthcare. Just like a coin, the G20 India 2023 summit had both positive and negative aspects. As my dear fellow panelist Kanishka Sethi mentioned, that the G20 India 2023 summit led to road closures and heightened security measures. Such measures from the government led to disruption of the daily lives of the people, especially the people living in the host city, that is New Delhi. Critics even argue that the funds allocated for hosting the G20 summit shall rather have been invested into much pressing challenges of the nation. For example, creating jobs for the unemployed, or providing quality education to all, even the poor or the rich. Everyone gets a chance to be educated, and even providing cheaper healthcare to everyone. As the panel concludes, I would like to mention that the success of the G20 India 2023 summit lies not only in the commitments. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for your conclusion. And G20 was like a well-crafted symphony, bringing all the perspectives together and forming it into a harmonious alignment. Now, I would like to say thank you to all the panelists for their insightful contribution. I believe we have gained a deeper understanding about G20 and its significance in the global challenges. I must say, it has been an absolute pleasure to discuss all the dimensions of G20. Further, we are going to have a Q&A round in which all the audience members are free to ask any questions from the panelists. And you are going to be really happy after hearing this that prizes for the two best questions asked will be given, but these prizes will be decided by the panelists. The panelists are now ready to tackle your questions. Are there any questions? Yes, please.
Good afternoon to everyone. So my question to the fellow panelists is that how the G20 engage with the non-members and the international organizations to achieve their goal.
Is this an open question or a select question? Open question.
So the G24 actually believes in overall development of the globe, of all the countries, taking all the countries into consideration. Just you may take an example of India. India even put South Africa or all the African countries into consideration, accepting this African Union as a newcomer in the G20 group, making it G21 as of for now. India even invited other small countries like Saudi Arabia and other Emirate countries. So according to me, G20's goal isn't just to make or just to get the development or result from a group of countries. It focuses on the global development.
Any other questions?
So as you all know, United Nations is a 100-year-old, around that old body, and it has 9 councils for different agendas: economic growth, environment protection. So is there a need of G20? Because by making a G20, isn't it a little bad for United Nations that they are failing to do their job? That's why you need another global summit. Like I discussed, the motto of G20 is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means to take the world as a one family. So they mainly focuses that they take all the people and the nation together and they tackle all the difficulties. No, but many developing countries are also getting help in this process. How is that a big family if all the members are there? As we discussed that there are two sides of a G20, but as you can see there are more benefit sides of G20. Last question: is G20 bigger or United Nations bigger in your opinion?
See, Sanskar, United Nations is a separate body and G20 is a separate body. G20 is a group of countries. United Nations was never a group of countries. So, taking into consideration the amount of members in the United Nations, it is definitely comparatively bigger than the G20, as we only have 20 and plus the South African Union as of for now in the G20. And United Nations has numerous countries, even Pakistan.
Also, United Nations can only do so much. I mean, when the world is this big, we need to have some kind of smaller groups which focus on specific topics. United Nations deals with every single thing in the world, any problem that can encompass it. But G20 focuses on some very particular goals.
I would like to add that both the organization does not hold competition against one another. They are just to actually solve the purpose. They are not to challenge one another. One is catering to people, the other is also catering to people. They are not in competition, but actually they help the people in need.
Moving on to next question.
Hello.
A huge round of applause for sir, please.
Why I'm interrupting in between, because the topic is very close to my heart. You told me which is bigger, United Nations or G20. It's not about big and small. It's about the purpose and what they are doing. What I feel, United Nations definitely bigger in size, but nowadays what's happening? The power center in the hand of only 5 countries, and they are dominating the world. What they want, things are happening like that. So there is a need of an organization in a democratic way which feels other countries, small countries, okay, they are also important. That's why with the theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, this G20 came into existence, and you will see in future the agenda of United Nations. United Nations is a very old organization, but if you see the history, always they start solving the problem. But what I feel, they never solve the problems. So we need problem solver, not the person who is just working, and the fund is more than bigger in the United Nations. So we need a organization who think everyone is equal, and in G20 we feel so clear everyone is equal, because if there is no world, why and how we can survive? So for the survival of everyone, we need to pay respect to everyone. That's why, okay, I hope I'm able to answer the question. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, so my question is, G20 presses on such important issues, and it also puts together countries of like-mindedness, and it has so many benefits. Why is it only 20 till now? I mean, is there not enough awareness about it? Because there are so many advantages of being in it. So why is that? Talking about the African Union who has joined G20, making it G21, it's an exclusive community. Everybody is welcome to join, but you cannot get everyone at place. You know, everybody has different opinions, different suggestions, so it takes time to get everybody on the same board. But it's a growth that's ever evolving.
So, like as I told you before, like first it was G7, which like consisted only 7 nations, but then it converted to G8 when Russia also joined. So we can see that G20 is expanding, as she said, my fellow panelists. So, like G20 is now G21, which makes South Africa a part of it. So it means that we are expanding.
But like, why is it taking that much time to expand?
Because not every country is a top industrialized nation. You know, it takes time.
Thank you.
I would even like to add up to that answer. So, as mentioned before in the panel discussion, if you will have thought it like with some, like, answer, you might have gone through that G20 was established just to face the financial crisis of the southern part of the globe in the later 1990s. But in response to that, numerous other countries started joining. It is never about spreading awareness or whatsoever. Each step takes time for being on a global stage. Hope so that helped.
Any other questions? Yes, Javed?
Thank you. So my question is that as the G20 head focused on inclusive growth, the world's largest financial inclusion happened in India, that is JAM, Jandhan, Aadhaar and Mobile. But to promote more of inclusivity, according to Professor Larry Summers' report and NKC report, the world requires around $125 billion to invest in each and developing nation. So how do you think that the JAM would be promoted and how to generate this big amount through the multilateral development plans? Thank you.
Thank you, Javed, for that question. See, JAM is an Indian body, right? So, JAM would focus much more on getting the inclusion much more into Indian, much more for Indian people. If talking about the global stage, each country's leaders and representatives will have to come together and like investing such a huge amount just to like investing such a huge amount for inclusion is not at all possible right away. Things will definitely take some time. But if you look onto the numbers, these might even increase due to inflation. Wouldn't they? So these are just numbers, and it isn't possible to right away go for an inclusive growth throughout the globe, taking each and every damn person into consideration.
Indian body. So firstly, in India, we should set an example that how we are promoting the inclusive growth. Then only we will, tell the world and follow us.
Now there are any other questions? My last question, Moderator.
It is an open question for all the panelists. Who is the largest G20 investor in India?
United Kingdom is the largest G20 investor in India, and they contributed $2 billion.
Thank you everyone. The question answer round has been finished. And we will decide the winners at the end, and now the anchors will take over. Now we will decide the two best questions.
So now the panelists will decide that who they found were the two best questions. So panelists, you can please deliberate and tell me the two best questions according to you. Alright, so the panelists have deliberated, and according to them, the best two questions were from Sanskar and Jagrit. So can we please have an applause for Sanskar and Jagrit? So answer, you can please come and defend it. Can you please have Jagrit and Sanskar? Thank you.
First of all, I feel so honored that I'm back in my college after 7 years approximately. I passed out in 2016 and I'm back in my college on the other side of the table. Thank you so much, sir, for inviting me for this. So, first of all, it was pretty difficult because you all did so well. So, first of all, clap for these guys. According to me, like there are certain feedback that I noticed in all the packages. So everyone was talking about the positive side, although it has 90% positive side. We talk about the criticism and the challenges that our countries face, and you delivered it so well despite having a you delivered it in a positive manner. Although it was talking about the criticism, but the way you delivered it is I it's a general feedback. There were some slides wherein you were presenting the graph. So it's just a feedback because when you show some data, you have to mention the source, which was missing in the slide. So take it as a positive. Then number 4, panels. Again, very good content. The way you speak, it was good. The body language you had to get body language. The way you were you were like there to engage on. Panel number 1. Your content was more about like it was too much focused on the mystical side, the present. Next time you deliver something, you should be more focused on the future. But it was that's all.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to request all the faculty and Shivan sir to please come to present the winners. Sachin sir, Arjun ma'am, Navneet sir, and Jyotsna ma'am, along with Shivan sir. So now it's time for the winners. After intense deliberation between the alumni judge and the faculties, 5 final awards have been decided. We have Harshal Sethi on the stage. Can we please have Rudra? Next up we have Priyanshi Bansal. will be soon circulating feedback form in all your class groups. Please fill it because your attendance you will only receive if you fill the feedback form. So please make sure you receive the feedback form soon, you fill it.